Tonight, the State Department has doubled the number of emergency evacuation flights for Americans who want to leave Israel. Again today, Israel and Iran traded strikes amid rising tensions.
Long before the Israel-Iran conflict escalated, two African voices had already raised the alarm. Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré and Pan-African leader PLO Lumumba have been warning Africa for years. We must unite. We must build. We must arm ourselves. Not out of aggression, but survival. Because while powerful nations invest billions into missiles and nuclear defense, Africa remains vulnerable, rich in resources, but weak in defense. And now, with the world on the brink once again.
Sometimes I wish, and I'm saying this seriously, that we too had a nuclear weapon.
Why can't we succeed in doing it? Because we lack practical chemistry.
Their voices echo like distant thunder, once ignored, now impossible to silence. And finally, Africa is beginning to understand why they raised the alarm. Across the world, nations are bracing for impact. The Israel-Iran conflict is shaking the global balance, and in the shadows, the United States watches closely, possibly preparing to step in. But while the giants posture and threaten, one continent remains exposed. Africa, the wealthiest land on Earth, and yet the most defenseless. We hold the gold, the diamonds, the oil, and the uranium, but we do not hold the power to protect them. For years, bold voices like Ibrahim Traoré and PLO Lumumba have warned, Africa must rise. Africa must unite. Africa must defend itself, not just with speeches and flags, but with technology, missile systems, and, if necessary, nuclear capability. Because in this world, sovereignty isn't granted. It's protected by power. Welcome to Win Africa, where we uncover the truths others fear to speak. And today, we ask, can Africa survive the next global war without nuclear power?
The situation between Israel and Iran is one that poses very many questions and does not lend itself to easy answers. The Israelis are saying that they now have air domination over the whole of Tehran. We have seen the use of hypersonic missiles which have hit Tel Aviv and have hit Haifa. And for the first time, we see a disruption of normal life in Israel, which had not taken place during the conflict in Gaza, and even when the Houthis were launching their ballistic missiles from Yemen. The question is, should the world be worried? Yes, the world should be worried. The world should be worried because there is a powder keg. What one fears is that if indeed you are to hit some of the bunkers where the enriched uranium is stored, what would be the impact in terms of the pollution that would take place? Who else will be drawn into the conflict? Remember that the Tehran regime has a satellite or what one would call client organization that work with it or work for it. You talk about the Houthis, and that is in Yemen. You talk about the Hezbollah in Syria and in Lebanon. What will they do? And one can also not discount what is being heard in the grapevine, that the North Koreans have said, we are ready to help. The Chinese are also said to be said, we are ready to help, even if it is in a subterranean manner. And the United States of America thus far has not entered into the conflict directly, but we know that their military assets are moving closer and closer to the theater of war. So if those are the early signs of a war that is big, of course I'm one who is slow to use the term world war, but there are those who are already saying that these are the early signs.
Let's pause for just a second. If you're still watching, it means you care about Africa's future. So why not take a moment to like this video? It helps trigger the YouTube algorithm so more people see this message. And while you're at it, subscribe and join our growing Win Africa community. where we speak truth, change the narrative, and push for an Africa that rises, united and strong. Your support means everything. Now, let's continue.
There are geopolitical reasons why the United States of America, which until a few years ago has been the hegemon, would want to ensure that it does not lose its foothold in that region, and that they would not allow a regime which they consider to be rogue in Tehran to have a military that has in its arsenal a nuclear device. We cannot forget that there are other activities that are going on in the world. One cannot forget that there is activity between Russia and Ukraine. One cannot forget that there are activities within the Middle East, as it is called now. One cannot forget that there is a rising power in China, and that all these factors are also making the United States a little bit worried, and they do not want a clan state, if one may, of a side that is not their own. We are fighting at a time where fights are not even, there are no men and women in boots on the ground. Drones have taken space, ballistic missiles. How do you prosecute this war? How do you deal with it in the context of the instruments that we have, which were created after World War II? Many questions, begging many answers, and it will take bold people, bold leadership at the political level to arrive at the desired destination.
We Africans must stop operating in silos. Rwanda alone will not confront them. Burundi alone will not confront them. But if we go through the regional bodies and ultimately the African Union, we may indeed succeed in putting away this bulwark. And remember, it is no longer just Europe. There is a new scramble for Africa. The Chinese are here. The Turks are here. The Qataris are here. All of them are coming back. And the military bases that you see here is telling you that if you don't behave, we are going to use force. Sometimes I wish, and I'm saying this seriously, that we too had a nuclear weapon, because that is what Europe and America understands. Thank you.
Here we are at Mendel University. Everyone has studied Mendel for those who did scientific studies. And I will give you a little anecdote. During my school career, there are people who do not like certain things and who cannot learn certain things. So when they cannot do it, they are nicknamed after the scientist who invented the thing. For example, we had people called Pavlov. We had people called Mendeleev. I love science. I am a scientist. I loved science so much that at any time, if you wake me up and ask me to recite Mendeleev's table, I have it in my head like that. It's the same with the chemical equations that we spend time balancing since high school. We are very strong. When on paper we are asked to balance a chemical equation, we do it. When in thermodynamics we are asked to calculate the standard enthalpy of formation of a body, we do it. This is to tell you that practice is very important, and we lack these laboratories to do the practice in our countries. For example, we are at war, we pay for equipment, we pay for ammunition, weapons and everything. And when I take the ammunition, the explosives and everything, Mali produces cotton, Burkina produces it, Niger produces it. But you know that it is the cotton cellulose that is transformed to make powder and explosives. Why can't we succeed in doing it? Because we lack practical chemistry. I think, still in the same vein, you see all the types of missiles that the Russian Federation can develop. And the latest one is shaking the whole world, which does not like the Avia. But the fuel of all these missiles is chemistry. Can we practically create this fuel and try to create an engine to propel a rocket or a missile? There are so many examples that we cannot finish citing. but it is to tell you that you have the chance to be here, I would say, at the origin of chemistry and mathematics. Because in Russia, there have been scientists in these fields, whether it is physics, chemistry, or mathematics. But as the representative said, history has been deceived, and it is made to understand that Russians are not strong in certain areas. Others have written history. They say they are strong. But I think that today, history shows us that everything is false. There are many scientists here. The origin is here. The first Mendeleev who created this table. I summarize. The matter is Russian. So take advantage of learning practically, so that it serves our countries. When a country is weak, it is doomed to disappear in this predatory world. We must be strong, and today the countries that are nuclear are strong. They never lose a war. But the nuclear bomb, where you have all done atomic physics, is certain. You are told that it is a neutron that strikes a nucleus that divides the energy. We know the equation, but how to enrich, even to change the isotope, how to enrich, how to do it practically. So take advantage of learning, because we need you to develop the country.
Ibrahim Traoré has repeatedly called on Africans to wake up. He urged us to study the West, not to imitate their dominance, but to learn from their technological strength. He boldly stated that Africa must begin producing missiles and other advanced weapons, not for destruction, but for self-preservation. And perhaps most powerfully, he challenged our students, the youth, to go beyond theory, to take an interest in the science of defense, to understand, both practically and intellectually, how weapons are built. Because without knowledge, there is no power. Africa has always been the land of riches, but now, more than ever, it must become the land of strength. Ibrahim Traoré spoke not just as a president, but as a protector. PLO Lumumba spoke not just as a thinker, but as a prophet. Africa is not at war, but it is under attack. Not with tanks and bombs, but with debt, manipulation, misinformation, and foreign-backed insurgencies. These are the weapons of modern conquest. And the battlefield? It's our minds, our elections, our classrooms, our internet, our minds. From the DRC's cobalt fields to the oil-rich coastlines of Nigeria. Africa's resources are being drained while its people remain in poverty. How is this possible in the 21st century? Because Africa is not just underdeveloped, it's underdefended. Countries like Libya remind us, when a leader dares to build an Africa-first model, to challenge the dollar, the euro, or the status quo, the result can be devastating. Gaddafi dreamed of a united Africa with its own currency and military structure. He was overthrown and killed in a NATO-backed war. What followed? A once stable country became a haven for terrorists, mercenaries, and human trafficking, and the West called it liberation.
ISIS released a new video today claiming to show the mass execution of Ethiopian Christians in Libya. Alex Ortiz in Cairo has more on the terror group's growing influence in North Africa.
The latest ISIS video delivered a clear and direct threat to Christians in the Middle East.
You will not have safety, even in your dreams.
This is not paranoia. This is history. And history is speaking to us now, clearly. What happens in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. The Israel-Iran conflict has already triggered cyber attacks, drone strikes, and proxy warfare across neighboring countries. The US has fleets in the Red Sea. Russia and China are watching. Everyone is arming. Everyone is calculating. Except Africa. Africa continues to pray for peace while the rest of the world prepares for chaos. If we don't change our mindset now, we will not survive the next phase of global realignment. And this is what makes Traoré and PLO Lumumba's message so urgent. They're not promoting war, they're preparing us for reality. Because the wars of the future will not wait for us to catch up. We must study defense. We must build cyber resilience. We must train in intelligence. And yes, we must begin to seriously consider nuclear power, not just as a weapon, but as a warning to the world.
Today, we are in a crisis. And I'm suggesting that part of our crisis is not only the colonial, but the post-colonial. And as I speak now, what is undermining our development is that there is a new scramble for Africa. The new scramble for Africa
is a little bit more different. It is not, they will allow us to have our leaders. We'll elect our presidents. We'll elect our governors. We'll have our ministers. That will happen, but they are not bothered. After we have elected them, you'll then see them sending their arrows ahead. You'll see Bill Gates come and meet your president. You'll see Tony Blair come and meet your president. You'll see Macron come and meet your president. You'll see all of them. And then they will never admit, but they'll be told, if you want money in agriculture, behave this way. If you want money in this area, behave this way. They will never tell that to the Chinese. They will never tell that to the Indians. They will never tell that to the Vietnamese. They will never tell that to the Koreans. But in Africa, they tell us.
Africa will no longer be the playground of global powers. Professor PLO Lumumba has long been regarded as a visionary. But vision alone is not enough in a world ruled by force. He has warned us repeatedly, Africa must stop outsourcing its security. Africa must control its own destiny. Yet too often, African nations wait for foreign troops to rescue us from our own crises. From Mali to Somalia to the Central African Republic, we see the same pattern. Foreign presence, temporary peace, then lasting dependency. But PLO Lumumba is changing the conversation. He now speaks of a strategic pivot, where Africa not only unites politically, but arms itself intellectually and militarily. His message aligns closely with Ibrahim Traoré's bold policies in Burkina Faso. But Lumumba brings the philosophical depth behind the urgency. He asks critical questions. Why should Africa depend on France for military support? Why are our satellites built in Europe? Why do our weapons come from nations who once enslaved us? And most powerfully, if North Korea can build a nuclear deterrent with limited resources, what exactly is Africa waiting for? The answer isn't just money. It's mindset. We have over 1.4 billion people, thousands of engineers, rich uranium deposits, and decades of scientific knowledge at our fingertips. What we lack is political will, the unified vision to use our resources to defend our future. Some will argue, nuclear weapons bring danger. But Lumumba counters, being unarmed brings destruction. Look at the Sahel. Look at Sudan. Look at Congo. Are these places at peace because they rejected weapons? Or are they in crisis because they were never equipped to defend themselves? PLO Lumumba calls for a Pan-African military scientific alliance, a union of African nations pooling resources to create a continental defense system. Shared satellites, AI-driven surveillance, missile defense programs, and eventually a nuclear doctrine grounded in deterrence, not destruction. He doesn't speak from fantasy. He speaks from logic. Because in a world where dialogue is backed by drones and diplomacy by bombs, power is not evil. Power is necessary. Power is what keeps peace credible. Their message wasn't for the elites, it was for you. The youth, the farmers, the students, the builders, the leaders of tomorrow. Because no nation will give us respect, we must build it. No superpower will protect us, we must protect ourselves. From the Sahel to the Cape, from Lagos to Kigali, from Kinshasa to Cairo, the time has come for Africa to stop waiting for peace and start preparing for power. The Israel-Iran tension may seem far away, but history has shown us that war has no borders when resources and influence are at stake. If Africa remains unarmed, we remain a target. If Africa remains divided, we remain vulnerable. But if Africa dares to unite, to develop its own defense systems, to think boldly, act swiftly, and plan long-term, then no threat from the east, west, or anywhere will ever control us again. So now, we ask you, what do you think? Should Africa pursue its own nuclear and defense programs? Should we wait, or has the time finally come to rise? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. We want to hear your voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Win Africa for more bold conversations, real stories, and powerful insights on Africa's future. And if you believe this message matters, if you believe Africa deserves to be heard, then share this video. Because the more we speak, the more we rise. This is not just content. This is the new African consciousness. This is Win Africa.